Hi, everyone. This is Kristen Fabella with the Orange County Coalition for Diversity in the Law. And today we have Arjun Ahuja. Arjun is an associate at Jones Day, and he will be talking about his career path and sharing his advice to young attorneys. And we are especially honored to learn from Arjun as April is the biggest Sikh holiday this month, Vaisakhi. And without further ado, Arjun, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
Arjun, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Yeah, so I grew up in Orange County, actually. I was born on the East Coast, but my parents moved to Orange County when I was about a year and a half old. So I moved to Irvine, and we've lived there ever since. I didn't go far for schooling either. I went to USC for undergrad. I did live on campus, but obviously it's very, very close by. And I majored in philosophy, politics, and law. It was kind of a joint major between the poli-sci and philosophy department. And a number of my peers in the department were aspiring to go to law school. And a number of my professors either were JD PhDs or had some kind of legal background. And so the path to law school was kind of a natural fit just in terms of both the subject matter of the major, but also kind of who I was surrounded by in a number of my classes. And I took 1 year in between to work. I did the Judicial Administration Fellowship Program through Sacramento State and the Judicial Council, and then went to law school, UC Berkeley, in the Bay Area for a couple of years.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that fellowship in Sacramento?
Yeah, so there are a couple under the sort of umbrella of the Capital Fellows Program. There were a couple of different fellowships, one with a state executive, one with kind of individual state assembly persons and state senators. But the one that I was in was the Judicial Fellowship, which was unique in that you work directly in a particular state superior court. I was placed in the Orange County one because they sort of wanted people with ties to a particular geographic area. And so I was basically, the program was, sort of adjacent to legal work, but it was really in judicial administration and sort of how to run a court system and how to administer justice. So it was a really interesting side of kind of legal world. I was working a lot with the general counsel of the court on a number of different programs throughout my time there. So one was the Orange County Superior Court has a particularly robust collaborative court system. Some people might have heard of that, drug court, homeless court, a couple of these other programs. One of the ones we were working on was a reentry court, but basically a court program set up for people who have violated the terms of probation, and instead of just sort of throwing them back in jail, figuring out sort of a plan to get them on their feet so that they don't reoffend and get them the help that they need. Another program that we were working on was trying to create a system, the unlawful detainer courtrooms, where people could be sort of steered towards mediation instead of having their cases come to a judgment. The hope that this would maybe lessen the burden on them in terms of it affecting their credit scores and their ability to get housing in the future. So there are really interesting ways that the courts in California are actually very sophisticated, and there are a lot of really interesting ways in which they are trying to administer and further justice in a number of ways, even beyond what I think people might think every day. So I got a really interesting kind of glimpse into that on the inside for the year that I was there before law school.
And so during that time, if you had to choose, what is one skill you think that you gathered from there?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that kind of learning a little bit of the art of diplomacy. I think judges are very smart and accomplished people, and with that can come an ounce of egotism. And learning how to kind of, especially as pre-law school, so as a very young and inexperienced person who had done a lot of good research on the topics I was talking about, but was obviously in the grand scheme of things inexperienced, sort of learning how to be confident in what you were advocating for, but also with a sense of humility and sort of not stepping on any toes, and you're really understanding your audience. So if there were judges that were particularly, already, their predisposition was already amenable to your position, how do you present to them versus ones who you knew were kind of going to be a little bit more difficult to persuade? I think that was definitely the biggest thing that I learned over the course of that time there.
So diplomacy, do you think we've had to, well, first of all, so you are an associate at Jones Day.
Yes.
How long have you been practicing?
Yeah, so just about 2.5 years. I graduated in 2020 from Berkeley, and this was the COVID year of the bar exam, which I think we had the sort of weirdest administration of the exam where it was delayed twice. We ended up taking it in October of 2020 instead of July, and it was online. So I took it from my grandmother's bedroom downstairs, which was actually quite nice, frankly, to not be surrounded by like hundreds of other stressed out people. And then we started at Jones Day a month later, so in November of 2020.
I was a COVID endemic attorney too. I was,
Oh,
yeah,
you were,
2020. Yep.
you know
So
the drill.
that was, oh yeah, I will never forget. It's just like this collective trauma almost that
Yeah, I
2020 grads and bar takers,
completely.
have ever had.
I think I was as scared as I was of just the bar exam in general. I think I was equally, or if not more scared of there being some bizarre glitch with the software system and, them just like throwing my exam out or something based on some technicality, the AI system that they were using to track your eye movements or something. It was a whole mess.
Oh, it was hilarious. You had to cover everything up in the room
Oh yeah.
and
Oh, there's a bunch of really
so
crazy
many
stories.
rules.
Totally.
I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
So you've been practicing for over 2 years now, and diplomacy is a skill that I don't think attorneys talk about enough. But have you ever had to use it in your own daily practice as an attorney? Is that something that comes up a lot?
Yes, I think so. I mostly do transactional work. I'm centered in kind of the financial markets practice at Jones Day, mostly doing real estate finance transactions, and also do some other kind of adjacent work, both have done in the past with the M&A teams, and now kind of a little bit with the cybersecurity, but mostly on the transactional side. I think in that world, certainly, you ultimately are, as a transactional attorney, not fighting the other side, and so. Even if you are mostly advocating for your client in terms of, getting the best terms, in whatever agreement you happen to be working on, ultimately you're trying to make both sides happy and come to agreement, come to a deal. So, obviously as a very young attorney still, I'm not always at the forefront of negotiations when it comes to these things, but even kind of, seeing, what I will become more involved with over time and also learning from the partners who are at the forefront of that, you really see how, that diplomacy really be beneficial for your clients. And I'm sure I would imagine, not that I've done a ton of it, but I would imagine even as a litigator, it doesn't help to be overly combative. So I'm sure that skill comes into play there too.
Diplomacy is a skill that I think even more experienced attorneys should continue cultivating. Wise beyond your years, Arjun. This month of April is the biggest Sikh holiday month. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess a little bit of background for some folks who may not know. Sikhism is the fifth largest world religion, founded in the Punjab region, which is a region in the north of India and east of Pakistan, and relatively young. It was founded in the late 1400s in a context where Islam and Hinduism were the predominant religions in the region at the time. It is a completely separate religion that sort of came about during that period, mostly focused on sort of monotheism, but also the idea of abolishing any social equities. So whether that's based on gender, there's no sort of caste system in the Sikh religion. And these were sort of the core tenets of the religion as it was founded a couple of hundred years ago. April in the Punjab region Vaisakhi existed as kind of a holiday at the time in terms of sort of just like a spring harvest festival. It's a very agricultural region, but in the Sikh tradition, the reason of its importance is in 1699, there were 10 gurus or spiritual teachers in Sikhism who succeeded one another. And the last one in 1699 kind of formalized the religion. So in the same way that one might argue that, Jesus was preaching certain things, but there's some moment after that in time where it became kind of a formal religion, Christianity. That's sort of a similar process, what happened here in 1699. This is when the Sikh religion was kind of formalized.
And do you do any celebration with your family or your friends?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think actually in this area, there's a pretty big celebration at the LA Convention Center. So a lot of folks in the Sikh community in the general sort of Southern California area, there is a celebration that kind of mirrors what a service would be in a Sikh temple or a gurdwara. On this particular day, that's sort of a prayer session, which all of our prayers are sung. The Holy Scriptures, the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, is written in singable poetry. So prayers are sung, and then there's kind of a area at the convention center of a bunch of booths where people are selling stuff, but also a bunch of Sikh-oriented nonprofits are telling people about the work they're doing. And also there's kind of a parade called a Nagar Kirtan that goes around parts of downtown LA. But anyone is welcome to attend any Sikh Gurdwara. There are no restrictions on who can come. You don't have to be a Sikh to go to a Gurdwara. And there's always something called langar, which is a free vegetarian meal that anyone can come to at any time. So everyone is welcome to go to this celebration every April. It's usually on April 13th or 14th, and is welcome there or at any Sikh temple in general.
Well, thank you for teaching us about this. Has this been a part of your upbringing?
It has, yeah. I would say I grew up in a what religious, I guess you could say, or I think for some families, like religion even just kind of becomes a part of the culture. And so one of the articles of faith for both men and women, but I think culturally speaking, particularly for men, is to wear a turban. That's always been kind of a part of my and so it's something that you kind of grow up with. The reason for that, by the way, is the idea that you have to stand out in a crowd. So if anyone is ever in need of help, they know that they can come to you. That's kind of the basic goal behind it. So it has been, I think for that very kind of visible reason, but I think other reasons as well, it's been kind of a part of my upbringing.
Great. Have there been any instances in your upbringing, your background, or your culture that have, played a role in your career trajectory?
I think to a certain degree, yes. I think a lot of minorities experience, especially in professional circles, that they are one of the only or certainly one of the few members of their particular group that they identify with in that professional circle, whether that's law or medicine or what have you. And I think there's a certain burden that's associated with that you're kind of representing for everyone else, and you kind of have to do your best and work the hardest and give it your all, because you're not sort of just representing yourself, you're representing a bunch of other folks who are otherwise represented in the given profession. So I think that I don't know if it steered me towards law per se, but I think in whatever I would have chosen, there's kind of that extra weight that you have to carry, and one carries it with pride, but that you have to do just a little bit better than you might otherwise be incentivized to do. I would say see it more as a blessing than a curse, because I think it's one of those things that you can view it sort of with either lens, and you can view it as something that this is difficult and this is something that other people don't have to worry about it, or you can view it as something that motivates you and something that kind of pushes you to be that much better and work that much harder. So I think it's a little bit of perspective.
I really like that. So shifting back to your career, what is the best advice that you've ever received, career advice that you've ever received?
Some of the best advice I think has been that, especially with the law or sort of legal profession and the path sort of with law school, there's no rush. I think, the nice thing about law school is you can kind of go at any time. There were some of my classmates at Berkeley who are 10 years older than me, and, were making career changes at the time. I think people should avoid this feeling that they have to go to law school straight after college, and then also after law school, the first job that they get, they have to kind of figure out exactly what they want to do for the rest of their careers right out of law school. And you can do a lot of things with the JD, and you really can take your time to just enjoy each aspect of your career, both in law school and beyond, and always see like, okay, what's the next thing I'm going to be doing? You don't have to decide that, I think, in the moment or at the outset. Kind of take it one step at a time. I think a lot of attorneys tend to be very type A, and I think that's why we're in this profession for some reason, in some ways. But try to enjoy the journey a little bit. Once you get into law school, make the most of it. You don't need to be thinking when you're a 1L about whether you want to make a partner at a big law firm. You don't even need to be thinking as a third-year associate like I am whether you want to make a partner at a big law firm. I think in a lot of ways, some level of having a big picture of what you want your career trajectory to be is necessary. But I think, I don't know if this had the same effect on you, but COVID, I think we all learned our own individual lessons from COVID. And the big takeaway for me was you don't know what's around the corner. And so planning too far ahead is honestly futile in a lot of ways. So try to just chop the wood in front of you, do a good job, try to enjoy the moment, what you're doing now. And things will work out the way they need to work out.
If someone wants to contact you, how can they reach you?
Yeah, absolutely. My information is probably available online on the Jones Day website, but my email is aahuja@jonesday.com. And if anyone wants to contact me, anyone who's thinking about law school or thinking about legal profession, I'm happy to speak with anyone.
Great. Thank you, Arjun.
Thanks so much for your time.